Suits, if there was a book or a line on who would be the new head coach in BC for the Lions, I would have hammered it that it was Buck
Yeah.
Pierce. And it comes down today. Not super surprising. Is he the right fit, obviously, there in BC?
Well, it's full circle for him. That's one thing. I mean, that's where he started his CFL career and as a quarterback. I think he fits the bill with regards to a young Nathan Rourke and how having a head coach who also knows the position well, knows, the pressure on that position, understands the responsibility of the position. And, I think that's a good fit in Vancouver for Buck Pierce. He's a lot like Mark Kilam in that in the last 3 or 4 years, when a coaching vacancy has happened, they have been the top two guys that people talk about. So, I think it's not a surprise that either of them are finally getting their chance. But just for the match between Vancouver and Buck, he likes the city. He's got that familiarity with it, and he's going to be very good for a young Nathan Rourke. Plus, I would also add this, and I don't think it's something that I've mentioned enough, but his offenses in Winnipeg have always had one, balance, great running game in combination with a great passing game, and he's been consistent. Like most coaches aren't consistent with it. He is. Never kind of strays away, although he did in the Grey Cup one time. So there's always been balance. There's always been innovation as well. If you watch a Bomber game, you will see more pre-snap motion from guys like Nick Dembski and Kenny Lawler and guys like that are running across the formation. And any type of movement like that is not only distracting for a defense, but it can actually pull you out of position. And I think that's one of the reasons for the success. I'm also often surprised that more teams don't use a lot more pre-snap motion. And it's just a small example of what Buck has done in Winnipeg and taken Zach's game to another level. And he has the opportunity to do that with Nathan. So I think it's a really good fit to have Buck Pierce in Vancouver. And let's be honest too. I mean, one of the things that maybe was the last, I won't say the last straw, that sounds too drastic, but the one of the elements for the firing of Rick Campbell in Vancouver was how that quarterback situation was managed between VA and Nathan Rourke. And that wasn't the only reason. I mean, the Vancouver roster was too good for where they finished the last 2 years, I think, and that was the main reason. But it was part of it, and Buck is not going to make that mistake. He just won't, because he knows what it's like to be given the keys to the car, but he also knows what it's like if you have to be in that backup role, and how important that is to be a good teammate there. So I think he'll be able to manage that very well.
Where does this leave Jordan Masinek?
Yeah, it's a great question, because the rumor is, and I think it's still just rumor. I mean, these things are happening so quickly now, guys, that as we're speaking, they could be announcing Jordan Masinek in Edmonton, because that's the rumor right now, that he's going to join Mark Kilam in Edmonton, and that'll be an interesting one too, because Rourke loves Masinek. He's a big fan of him. And they've worked well together. 2 years ago, they were very good together before he went down the NFL. And so if you remove that, then the question becomes, if it becomes official, okay, so now is Buck Pierce going to be the head coach and offensive coordinator and quarterback coach? Some guys can pull that off, but some can't, especially a new guy in his first opportunity as a head coach in Buck Pierce. So that will be the next thing that we have to, look at and talk about. I think that we just talked about Buck and how he can really help Nathan Rourke. So that doesn't change. And I think that will be there. It will be solid. But does Buck become the OC if they lose Jordan Masinek? Because, that's at times a bit of a gamble to put that much responsibility. Well, Dave Dickinson struggled with it in Calgary.
Mm-hmm. So Suits, you obviously travel around the league. You call games all over the place for TSN, but you call home the West Coast. So you're on top of things as well with the BC Lions, maybe more so than some other places, or maybe it's just the same. But the point is that you probably have your finger on the pulse of what's going on there with the BC Lions. This year, they started off big. They had 50 Cent. We were talking about that. It doesn't seem like it's that long ago that we were talking about that. And, the big crowd that they had to start off the season, and they were up and down, and there was the quarterback thing. And then now they're getting a new head coach. Maybe just talk about the state of the franchise with this Buck Pierce move and moving forward, and hopefully trying to build for Lions fans on what started last year, and that maybe not so much with the record, but with momentum towards positive things, it seems like.
Without a doubt. And the Grey Cup festivities were a great sort of look into the future plans and what Amar Doman here in Vancouver has planned for this franchise. I mean, first of all, the on-field is handled by a new GM now. It's going to be handled for Dwayne Vanu, who has got Edmonton experience, but now in Vancouver for the last few years with Amar Doman, is excellent as their president. I think about going to the Grey Cup Festival. It was like the Tuesday before the game on Sunday, and there were 5,000 kids on the super slides and running 40s and throwing the ball through the hoop, and every one of those 5,000 kids had BC Lions t-shirts on. And this is something that Amar Doman had arranged through the team to bus amateur football players, 12-year-old kids, 10-year-old kids, bus them from the outskirts, the lower mainland and the outskirts of Vancouver, and bring them into the festival, introduce them to the fun that can be CFL football, put on the shirt and have the logo right there so that when you go home, the first thing you do as a 10-year-old is Google that logo and Google the team. And, you're building that fan base. Amar Doman, and I've had many conversations with him now, he has looked at it in a different way that I think a lot of owners have. He's looking at it as building football in his province and by extension the country, and then the business side of it will take care of itself. That he's more concerned with building the game of football, the popularity of the game of football in the community, and then not to the business will be fine if you do that. And we call it grassroots, but I think grassroots became an overused, well, what does that mean? Try to get kids to the stadium, that kind of thing. Yes, it does, but he's gone above and beyond. So it's more than just a concert to get, 45 or 50,000 in for the first game. But I guarantee you he'll do that again too.
The other thing that came is a few hours ago, the BC Lions signed, and we saw him here playing the Regina Thunder, Okanagan Sun running back Elian Noah. So Okanagan Sun to the BC Lions. Like, that's a move. We see that in Saskatchewan where a Thunder or a Hilltop, right, they keep it and they try to when they can, but that's a move like you're talking about, Glenn, that that next level and that culture of football in the province, and for the young kids that are around the Okanagan Sun to go, now this guy's going to play for the BC Lions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe.
And it was the same thing with Andrew Harris originally in Vancouver when he was playing for the Raiders over on the island, Vancouver Island. He was playing junior ball there, and he got a chance through Wally Buono, and then became one of the greatest running backs in the history of the league. And because he got that opportunity. And by the way, that's another real positive between the hirings of Mark Kilam in Edmonton and Buck Pierce in BC. Both those guys understand the importance of the Canadian ratio. Finding, first of all, to your point, Barney, it's finding good football players first. And if they happen to have played for the Huskies or the Rams, and you're the Riders in that draft, then excellent. You're going after those guys because now you're bringing in more fans as well to watch those kids that grew up in the province. But they have to be good football players first. So that's, again, goes back to that: develop the game, support the game, build the game, and the business takes care of itself at the other end. So, yeah, I think it's another indication. Kilam understands the importance of Canadian talent, and so does Buck Pierce. I mean, Buck Pierce has had The starting tailback beat Canadian. Their best and most consistent receiver the last 5 years has been Nick Dembski in Winnipeg. So Buck Pierce there's no hesitation there in putting a Canadian in a prime spot, a skilled player, skilled position in a prime spot on his offense.
What's the next, I guess, shoe to fall, or what's the next CFL move that we're going to look at now? Is it Misimic in Edmonton? Is it a quarterback somewhere? What do you think's next?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see, like what happens with, the Cody Fajardo discussion.
Yeah.
In Montreal, that's going to be an interesting one.
Where do you think he plays?
Yeah, it's a great one because his personality would put him in a fit with a lot of teams. Even if you had a Trevor Harris, not to suggest he might go back to Saskatchewan, but if you had a veteran quarterback that was your starter, and you brought in Cody to support that, he would be the right personality to do it. I think you would have a guy that would be a great teammate first, even if he wasn't in the prime role. So, there's that with Fajardo, but it's a great question. The other one for me, guys, is what are the staffs of these two teams now going to look like? Mark Kilam's building a staff, and he'll do it quickly in Edmonton, and Buck Pierce in Vancouver. And what does this do to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? I know Saskatchewan Roughrider fans are probably wondering, is this the year now? I mean, Stanley Bryant signs a new contract. He turns 40. His next birthday, he's 40. 40. Guys, I could barely skate in a beer league hockey league at 40. Come on. Like, he's still playing pro football at 40 and playing well. But now they lose their offensive coordinator. Richie Hall moved back 2 years ago as the consultant now. The Bombers are going through changes in their coaching staff, and their core in Zach, Stanley Bryant, those guys, they're a year older. And I think for the last 5 years, I've been saying I would not bet against the Bombers going into the season as being the front runner in the West. But this year, maybe it's up for grabs more, because those guys are a year older. Their coaching staff is going to be completely different. What does that do to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? I think all of those storylines will unfold pretty quickly here.
Parity often gets thrown around as a big word, quite often in a lot of leagues, Suits, but maybe with the CFL in certain years. Is the CFL a stronger league when there is a little more parity, when there aren't teams that are just having stinker of years and other teams that are having wagon years? Is it a little bit better for the league, and do you see a little bit more of it next year?
Well, I always think it's better for the entertainment value of the league. I would say this about any league. If there's a great division in hockey with the Canadian teams that are all fighting for playoff spots, we're all more engaged. Like, we're all watching it closer to see if the Jets can, get to the playoffs and play well, the Canucks, the whole thing. So, I think when you have great parity and as many teams involved into that playoff run in the back half of the season, then that keeps more fans engaged. And that's always good for the league and good for the bottom line. It's definitely good to have parity when it comes to our job as television broadcasters, because, when 65% of the games are decided in the final 3 minutes, man, that's money. That's money. Like, sometimes it's less than 30% in most leagues. And now you're closing in on 70% of the games being decided by one possession or a walk-off field goal. That kind of excitement, out of your seat excitement. I know for Barney, when he's got bets on the line, it's driving him nuts.
Rouge. Yeah. I need a rouge.
But it is good, but there's a lot of things that become sort of hamster wheel pet peeves for me. I think what's best for the league is when we talk about the game and talk about the players. We have great ownership now. We mentioned Amar Doman, what he's doing in Vancouver. Montreal's got great ownership. Ottawa's excellent. the fan bases are growing. The fan bases are getting younger. Our ratings are through the roof. They really are. Our ratings at TSN in the regular season are the best ratings we get for any sport that we do, really, in the regular season. So it's excellent. And that growth will continue when the narratives stay on the field, stay with the players, stay with the coaches. And we don't have to do the ratings watch every week. Do you guys are on social media. Do you see the ratings of the NHL every single week for every single game?
So,
because I never see.
We talked about this. This is why ratings don't mean anything to me. I've been in this business for 27 years, radio, TV, especially in Saskatchewan. Like, if people really knew how ratings worked here, it's a joke. Secondly, the reason why ratings when it comes to hockey and football, basically anything these days, is 40%, I think that's the number, are running streaming services. So how you can't track IPTVs, which is a gray area, I know, but you're not, traditional cable is a thing of the past. Satellite TV, a thing of the, so any of those trackable measurables where you can get the data, they're gone. Like, you go to a 30, Curtis and Colson. What cable package do you guys have?
None.
Yeah.
No cable.
See? So the ratings thing, there has to be a different, and my wife is a data freak, data major, right? So there's got to be something else measurable, and I don't know how you get there. So long story, I answered your question in a long way, but I think ratings are a joke.
Yeah, well, I guess you can use them as a guideline, but I'm with you. And this analysis that we seem to have an obsession over football numbers. I mean, even if we show NFL games, there are times when our NFL games don't get the same rating as our CFL game. There's many times that happens. It's usually not the Patrick Mahomes game, but because the NFL gets great ratings on CTV. But the bottom line is that I keep seeing year after year this hamster wheel of the ratings are down 1% from last week. Well, like who cares? I guarantee you not one fan listening to us talk about this are going, oh, good. It's down 1%. It's up 2%. Like, there's an obsession about ratings in the CFL. It's on social media every single weekend. Why?
No, maybe Harry's okay with numbers going up down. He's a professional hater.
That made no sense to anybody that didn't listen to the show yesterday.
You gotta listen every day, folks. You can't take a day off.
Colson, shut Curtis's mic off. No, but
Curtis is on a timeout.
Yeah, we get what you mean, Glenn. It's always good when you can make Curtis turn red in the studio. It's awesome. Okay, when we regroup on Thursday, the one thing I want to find out the process. You don't have to answer it now. We can talk about it. Just want to know the process and where it is, and if you know anything on the new commissioner. Right? Yeah. Like, I think that should be announced here soon. I don't know. I don't run. I'm sure they got my resume. I haven't got a call yet, but let's talk about that on Thursday, Suits. So yeah, chat with you in a few days.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
See you, Suits.
Right on. It is press coverage